Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We are having a cut the line episode of Film Study today. Talk about the, I think, fairly surprising acquisition of Maxx Crosby from the Raiders for the Ravens 2026 and 27 number one selections, as it's being reported by Adam Schefter. We don't know if there's more involved, but joining me to talk about that is Alec Pulianis. Alec, how you doing?
Been better, Ken. When I first saw the news, it did not have any details. So I was surprised and knew it was going to be a lot. And then when I saw it was as kind of reported, as expected, that it would be two firsts, or I was disappointed to say the least. I was just I didn't think that was the way we would go about things. So it's definitely a very surprising start to a free agency, period that I've really I was really positive about the trajectory of the offseason so far, and now I'm like, it's cooled my horses a bit, but there are some positives of this trade for sure. So we gotta just live with it now.
All right, so let's talk through that, and we'll get to a lot of your thoughts on this, I'm sure, as we go through. Crosby's made 5 straight Pro Bowls. Twice he's been named AP1, twice 2 other times AP2. He was second in the Defensive Rookie of the Year standings in 2019, his rookie season, obviously. And he's twice been in the top 6 in the Defensive Player of the Year voting, 6th in 22 and 4th in 23. That does often go to an edge player with a big sack total. He has 69 and a half career sacks. That's an average of 9.9 sacks per season since entering the league. There's no shortage of outstanding credentials, certainly, in terms of what he's done with the Raiders. On the field, we'll talk about this a little bit more in terms of what the Ravens get out of this. He brings a lot of interesting components, but credentials-wise, he certainly has been a very durable defensive lineman, really played mostly defensive end in his career and not left outside linebacker, which he has played some of, but kind of an interesting scheme fit as well for the Ravens.
Right. I guess one of the big things I was surprised about with the move too is that I guess I almost anticipated they would invest less on the defense and lean onto Minter's scheme and his expertise to generate. I mean, we already have a lot of defensive weapons. Was my thought, and
Yeah.
I didn't think you need another, so to speak. But so that was another surprise to me. But on the flip side, you give him that, you give him hopefully a healthy Madubuike, and this is going to be a very interesting pass rush.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. I think they've certainly got questions at corner that they have to address. They have questions at defensive tackle they need to address, and they have questions at inside linebacker they mostly need to address due to the Teddy Buchanan injury. But they've got the bones certainly of a great defense here. Let's see if they can put the pieces in around. And I'll just remind Ravens fans, we're talking about this being one of the best secondaries ever. Before last training camp, after the acquisition of the great Jair Alexander. And
Right.
now we have to see how that worked out. And obviously in terms of age and whatnot, we're talking about players who are up there in both cases. Crosby obviously has been playing recently at a higher level than Alexander, but this is that sort of thing. Let's talk about the contract a little bit first. So he's under contract, first of all, through 2029. The Raiders made this deal, and it is a very flat contract structure. That has significant portent for the Ravens. He'll make $112.9 million over the next 4 years. That'll be 8.5% to 9% of the cap over that period. It'll be a little bit more this year. It'll be a little less by the end of the period. So that's on average for the next 4 seasons. He'll make about, or as a percentage of the total cap over the next 4 seasons, he'll make about 8.5% to 9% of cap. However, the Raiders front-loaded this contract in a way that allows potential restructuring from the highest salary of $30 million in 2026. By the way, that 2026 salary is fully guaranteed, but it doesn't mean it can't be restructured, I assume, into, say, void years or prorations throughout the life of the contract.
Correct. And yeah, there's plenty of tweets going around of what that would look like. They can open up a lot of space to make more moves if they're trying to go all in on this window, and it certainly seems like they are, given the draft pick. Giving up the draft pick.
All right, let's talk about what this means for the defense, because I think this is by far the most positive thing. We want to spend some time on this, and how does Crosby really fit into the Ravens defense as it is. I think the pass rush immediately becomes feared. Crosby has an outstanding pressure rate and close rate both. Lots of sacks and quarterback hits, both in total and as a percentage of total pressures. So his pressure rate is high and his close rate is high there. Comes with a great bull rush. He's very slippery. We've seen him do it against the Ravens numerous times. Stunts a lot. Bull rushes a lot. He can win on the edge a lot. Very quick out of his stance. Extremely positive on Crosby, the player. So I don't have any. Ravens are getting a great player, no doubt. In this, it comes with other risks, but I think there's no question they're getting a great player.
Yeah, definitely. A feared pass rusher. I guess like my hesitation is, how much more do we like Crosby than some of the free agent options that we had, right? Because I mean, it did cost us 2 picks. That's the part that I keep thinking about is,
Yep.
These are dollars that are getting spent, right? And there's draft picks. Like, we could have just spent the dollars and got a guy. I guess like maybe this is, I hope I'm wrong. Right.
Let's save this for a little bit later.
Sure.
I do want to go over this because I think there's huge downstream implications. I think there's huge questions about how they did it. I think it's a departure from team philosophy. But Maxx Crosby is here. Let's talk about how Maxx Crosby fits into the defense, first of all, before we complain about how much.
I guess like, honestly, I'm a little bit more down on Maxx, I feel like, than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are heralding that he doesn't miss much time, and I just think that's a lot of snaps, right? Yeah. Like, and like, past results aren't an indication of future success, but like, I guess I'm gonna have to like get used to it, right? Like, I'm not saying that in a vacuum, Crosby makes this team much better. It's a guarantee that is higher, I would say, than anyone in free agency. So I'll give him that, right? Like, I think he's better than anyone that was in free agency. I think that it's
expected performance, not a guarantee, but expected performance is exactly higher than anyone else. Okay.
Yeah, I would say so. I would admit that. I would also just say, like, I'm probably a little bit lower than the average fan. I don't think of him in the same tier as Myles Garrett, for instance. Now, obviously, that's a crazy person, but like, it's a lot of capital. I don't consider him the same as Michael Parsons. Right?
All this is true. So, okay, yeah. I'm going to relate this in a different way, and I want to redirect this conversation a little bit and be as positive as we can about this thing, because we have plenty to talk about later in terms of the risks associated with this. But let's think back to draft night 2020, and it's out there, by the way, folks. If you'd like to watch it and see just how freaking upset I was about the Ravens selecting Patrick Queen over Xavier McKinney, go take a look. It's out there. If you can't find it, I'll send you a link. And it's basically, I was beside myself about this in terms of the thing. I thought the inside linebacker position had been overvalued, and there are a bunch of risks that came with Queen. It was new to the position. Even though he's young, he maybe wasn't completely physically built out to play the position. He didn't know how to play linebacker at that point, even though he made some splash plays at LSU. There were a bunch of reasons why I hated it. Okay. But the fact of the matter was, he was there. And, the only thing I could really say at the time is, I don't like the pick, but I hope he makes the Hall of Fame. And that's where I am with Maxx Crosby. I don't like this trade, in some sense, and we're going to talk about some of the risks. I'm not completely sold on it. Maybe that's the better way to put it. But I certainly hope he makes the Ravens Ring of Honor. I mean,
sure.
this is a,
I mean, that's an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, okay, so he's on a contract, right, until you said 29.
Yeah.
And he'll be, what's math? Like
32 in 29.
Yeah. So they could sign him to another deal if he's still doing well, and that'd be 6-7 years of production with the Ravens. And
whatever the second deal, whatever he gets there is just a market value extension.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, there's enough time here to have a legacy player, right? Like, so like kind of like you were saying, like, Ring of Honor, like there's time for that, and people can remember him maybe as a Raven more than a Raider. That'd be kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So there's that potential for sure.
Yeah, and he could have 4 great years with the Ravens potentially, and that would be enough for a Ring of Honor career. We saw it was enough for some players of the past. I think one of the really good ones who's not in yet, who had a great 4-year career, but it's not recognized, is Matt Burke. What an acquisition that was in terms of what a signing that was in terms of what they got. All right. So Crosby, extremely slippery, got this great bull rush, can win the edge. He's just typically is much quicker and a better athlete than the right tackles he's gone up against. That's an important point, by the way. He's played almost as exclusively on the offensive right side, opposite the right tackle in his career. I very much expect that to continue, but it's a little unusual for that to be the case with the Ravens, with a player who doesn't drop the cover, and he almost never drops the cover. Less than 2% of his career past snaps has he dropped the cover. So no, it's not totally atypical of an edge that a 4-3 end that you wouldn't see him dropping the cover very often, but he's going to be asked to play a slightly different position in Baltimore. Although a lot of the snaps where he's on the field, it'll be a 4-man front on an obvious passing down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess everything's on the table now. Who knows what Minter has in mind for the defense, like with the personnel that he had and now with the personnel he's acquiring. It could be a big change as far as how we expect the Ravens defense to go.
Yeah. I think if you look at who the Ravens might have across the line of scrimmage and you want to be as optimistic as possible, I think it gets pretty damn optimistic about their pass rush front now.
Oh, yeah.
They have from left to right, going the offensive left side to the offensive right side. I always make you careful about that. I think we'll see Mike Green at that rush spot more on third down. I certainly hope so, because the world has changed. Tavius Robinson and Green are the starting point for the edge position. Maxx Crosby now is the new anchor for it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And now, I hope this means they don't need to go after a player like Draymond Jones to fill out the line. Maybe they can fill it with a draft pick, and get it cheaper that way. So that's a downstream potential benefit from it. But start with Mike Green over on that side. Hopefully he fulfills his potential. Next to him, you have Travis Jones at the nose spot, who would be a one tech on that side, who is where the pass rush always has been generated from, is how teams choose to double team him, slide to him, whatever it might be. Because if you block Travis Jones, try and block Travis Jones one-on-one, you do so at your own peril. And we really saw that a lot in the second half of 2025.
Yeah, I mean, very nasty. I'm already excited about those two players, and I honestly, the best is yet to come from what you're about to say.
Well, so you go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I'm just easily excited. I see Mike Green and Travis Jones. That's pretty good. Okay. But then the neit's two, it's like, well, that's outstanding. So hopefully a healthy Matt and BK. We saw the workout video, and I would assume he's not just doing that for like a fashion, career. Like he's probably trying to play football.
His new clothing line or something. He's trying to work it. No, I don't. I can only take that positively, and yet I think it may still be a case that Matt BK wants to play, and he hasn't had the come to Jesus meeting with his doctors about it yet, and that's what I'm concerned about. Is that they've had the They've had all the talks, and Matt BK wants to play, wants to take whatever risk, he's willing to sign whatever waivers are necessary. And he hasn't just really talked to the Ravens doctors about what this might mean for him and the risks it entails. So hopefully it's not a mirage and he can play again. And hopefully he's not taking any significant risk with his long-term health.
Yeah, that's all I want. I honestly, that's all I care about at this point is his long-term health. I wrote it off for a while ago. And if he comes back, that's just gravy. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, then they would have Crosby at left defensive end / left outside linebacker. We'll talk even about a 3-4 situation. So on early downs, he'd be an outside linebacker, probably playing standing up. He may still play with his hand in the ground a lot of the time, just because he's very comfortable getting out of his stance quickly like that. But he could also spend some time playing standing up. He's done that some earlier in his career, not in recent years. So I had to go back to about 21 or 22 where he'd actually played some significant amount of stand-up snaps. But he has done it in his career. I'm not saying that he is not.
Do you have his snap percentage?
Left and right?
Not left and right, just in general. Like maybe
very high.
The down splits.
I don't have that, but he's played almost every snap for the Raiders. So he's played 6,496 snaps in 7 years. That's over 925 snaps per year. And take 925 over maybe about 1,100, and that would be about
that's
right
like every snap.
Yeah,
it's 57 a game, assuming a 16-game schedule, which I know is not hasn't always been the case, but he's lost a few games to injury. That's a lot.
That durability is very exciting. It's very exciting because they were asking Mike Green to play about 65% last year, and he was really overworked. He needs to be a situational pass rusher. Crosby, you don't have to worry about as much, but then again, we're buying into later years in his career, so you probably have to manage him the Ravens way and reduce his snap count from 900 per season or 925 per season to, I don't know what it might be, 825 per season.
Sure. All those big leads, No,
we had last year that we wanted to talk about. All right.
Guys, you told me to be optimistic, Ken. I'm being optimistic.
We're being optimistic here. We are being optimistic. So the next guy then outside of Crosby who could really benefit from Crosby's presence is Hamilton. Yeah. They've got. I'd really be even more excited about this in some ways if Madubuike. I wouldn't be more excited if Madubuike is not back, but I would be almost more as excited if they got a nose tackle who could get some good pocket push, and Travis Jones moves to 3-tech next to Crosby. That is a devastating pairing. And frankly, it's probably a more devastating pairing than whatever can be expected of Madubuike at this point next to Crosby. Madubuike also has kind of a history of a lot of penalties that have negated a fair percentage of his sack value over his career. That's an unfortunate byproduct of being as good as he is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now I'm like I'm encouraged to go watch his highlights or something to better understand everything that he brings to the table and try to get more excited about him. I mean, I always know he's a good player, but I guess it's now time to fully embrace it.
Well, I have a fair amount of experience from watching him torment the Ravens over the years. I mean, he certainly has some of those.
I remember those.
like the 21 season opener there. That was just a miserable trip to Las Vegas. I can tell you that. That was a kind of a surreal experience, by the way, because they let the play occur. They got the ball down to the 1 yard line. We actually walked out of the stadium at that point. All of a sudden, we're walking on a bridge back across towards the Strip in Las Vegas, and we're watching into the outside. The game's still going on, and the Ravens had the ball back after an interception had occurred in the end zone, and then they lost anyway. But Crosby went off that game, and that was when the Ravens had their big 2021 left tackle
conundrum
churning, including Villanueva. That was awful. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like you mentioned with Hamilton, I imagine, he's not going to play any edge this year. He did a lot of versatility, and we asked a lot of him, and I think we'll put him in positions that are a little bit easier for him, so to speak, physically, and that's a nice downstream benefit as well.
I'll take the other side of that. I think he's going to play very much a Derwin James-esque role of he'll rush the passer on a as frequent as needed basis. And the thing that I think will facilitate that, I mean, Crosby is one thing, and he could really benefit from having Crosby locking up that right side of the offensive line. And potentially, it could be a tight end out there that ends up getting that assignment, depending on how those assignments roll through Travis Jones eventually. And then you've also got the possibility of having Marlon Humphrey at safety, which I really hope is the end result of this. That would allow him to jump right in on top of that slot player or slot tight end even, and allow Hamilton the freedom to do more pass rushing and not less. So I'm really excited to see how the pass rush is deployed this next season.
For sure. I will say one of the other surprises, I guess, about this is that I was under the assumption, seemingly incorrectly. So I would maybe because you brought Marlon, this is what struck it to me. I had a feeling that the Ravens were gonna just stick it out with the old guard as far as this season goes and just see what happens before making any decisions about extending or whatever with these players. But it seems like maybe they're more comfortable with some of these players than I thought, or they're more comfortable with. I mean, getting Crosby doesn't really implicate that they're comfortable with Roquan or Marlon, but I guess like they're willing to not just see what they have, right? Like they're already adding to it in a very aggressive way, so they might be aggressive with Marlon and Roquan.
In the situation of Roquan, I don't think there's ever a doubt that they were going to keep him for 2026. In the case of Marlon, I think there is a question of whether or not he stays for 26.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it may relate to a position change, and it may relate to a cut in salary that facilitates it for the team. But I the chance of Roquan being back is near 100%. The chance of Marlon being back, I would say, is at least 75. I think they have a plan for him. I hope that they, they figure it out, and I hope it involves a position change. And as I've said many times on this show, even if he changes positions, I expect to be back at corner at some point this year for the Ravens out of necessity. I mean, I would expect that to be the case because they tried to move Jimmy Smith to safety, a couple of different times, and it always ended up him back as the starting outside right corner at some point during the season.
Right. Yeah, just like Coy Mayo was going to be a first baseman. Now he's playing third every day.
Yeah, a little bit like that, unfortunately. Okay. What else to talk about? Let's talk about the philosophical change for the Ravens, because this is where you get into some of the apparent negativity. So Alec is probably going to dominate this. But the Ravens have never traded a number one for a player. Never, ever, ever in their history. So in 30 years, and it's 30 full seasons that they've already played, they never did it. Now, they had some times where they traded back or they traded a number one pick from a future year one other time. We'll go through those, but they've never traded a number one pick for a player. It's been one of the anchor points of the philosophy of this team. And now they've traded two for a single player.
Right. And they also, they traded a lottery, or not a lottery pick, but like a non we don't know what it is, a surprise box first round pick. That's the one that got me the worst. I think if the trade was a first and a second this year, and it's like I knew what it was, which apparently was being offered by another team, the Cowboys, I think. I would have been like, okay, like I honestly think my tenor would completely have changed. I think like just because you don't know what's going to happen in 27 is the part that kills me the most about the trade. If you look at it from a JJ point perspective, even if you assume they win the Super Bowl, everything's hunky dory, it's like giving up the 5th overall pick this year.
That's right.
And I'm like, that's like so rich. Like I just can't imagine. Like when you put it in that terms, I'm like, that's so crazy. Like that you would do that, and that's like the best case scenario, And then the worst case could be even worse. That's actually what makes me. I know it'll come in the downstream implications. We can talk about that a little bit more later, but like, I feel like this might not be it. Like there might be more coming to make this to be more aggressive, to almost like protect the value.
Like it's already been traded away.
It's already been traded away. Like, or to try to like really hedge their bets that they aren't going to look stupid. Like, so
it's increases exponentially with every move is all I can say about that, because all it's going to take is one injury for this to go wrong. So if you're giving your chances for two injuries to let you make you look stupid, then you're that much worse off. They've traded away about 55 to 60% of their draft capital for the 26 and 27 drafts in one trade. At the very least, this changes the tenor of draft night significantly, or the draft watch party significantly over a 3-day period. I mean, one of the things I really love to do is watch, all however many hours there are of the draft, 13, 14, 15, 16 hours of the draft. And it's kind of depressing to think about having only 45% as much draft capital. I think it's about 57% this year that they had in round one. And that's despite the fact they have a bunch of picks, a bunch of compensatory picks. It's still 57% is tied up in that number 14 overall selection, which they no longer have.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, you have it in your notes, the 4th or 5th. So
there you go.
Yeah. So I did that math before the show, and I guess like I said, like that's always, I guess, the most scary part to me. Like, I mean, just look at the Rams when they got the first round pick of the Falcons, who thought they were being so slick when they picked up Pierce, and that they would never be picking that high again or whatever, and then it's the 8th overall pick, right?
Mm.
And that is similarly how we got Jamal Lewis,
Jamal
right?
Lewis, yeah.
Yeah,
They traded for the number 5 pick overall because the Falcons had just made the Super Bowl and wanted the Ravens number 2 selection at number 34, 35, something like that. And they traded him that and ended up being the number 5 overall pick the next year.
right. Like we've seen the horror story and benefited from it. So that's the part that like kind of kills me, and it just puts so much like pressure on this season that I didn't want to have,
Mhm.
from like a fan perspective. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting departure, and I just don't know what this means. It's now makes me think that anything's possible derogatory, right? Like, who knows
Range of
what.
outcomes is much wider.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a excited anything is possible. It's like, oh boy, like I really appreciate the quiet, calculated side of things, and this just feels so splashy that it just seems so different. Like I got an email today. I'm sure you did too, about the Flock forum, and I'm like, it just completely changes like the way I like. I have so many questions that I wish I could ask, at that forum, and maybe they'll talk about it some, but it just seems so out of character and just so interesting that yeah, we'll see what happens next.
All right. So you kind of got to this already, but it's approximately equal to the number 4, number 5 selection. Let me give you the math on how I got there. You get the number 14 pick overall this year. Then if you assume that the Ravens are not eliminated prior to the divisional round, so they're out of the playoffs this year in either the divisional round, the AFC Championship, or they play in the Super Bowl, any one of those 3 results, then they'll pick no better than 25th next year. Sorry, they would have picked no better than 25th overall next year, and that pick would then go to the Raiders. And as such, it's 1,700 and change JJ points. 1,800, I think, is the number 4 pick, and 1,700 is number 5 pick.
Yep.
Those numbers aren't cast in stone. They can be worth more or less, obviously, if you have one of those top picks, because there can be quarterbacks involved and whatnot. But and I did not. This is important. I did not discount the 2027 value at all in that thing. I'm assuming a divisional round exit, supposedly. So I think it's a very rosy picture. Is that it's only worth the 4th or 5th pick still. Because I think you could end up not making the playoffs is a possibility, or certainly losing in the first game in the wild card round, say on the road, might be a possibility. Although it certainly looks like the Ravens damn well better win the AFC North with the roster they've assembled at this point.
Sure. It seems reasonable. I mean, it's one of those things, Ken, where if the Ravens had done something like trade their first round pick, and the future pick to go and select a guy like Bailey or Reese, right? Like, how would we have felt in a way, right? Like,
I would have liked it a lot more, because you don't pay the $30 million per year to Crosby if you do it that way.
I agree. I'm just saying that for the audience to hear. Yeah. Like, it's like worst case you get like a guy like Styles, maybe, I don't know, which is like an interesting pick at that point. But I don't know. Like, that's just that would have been more believable, I guess, that the Ravens would do something like that than what they did. So yeah, very, very, very surprising. And I agree with your point with draft night too. I mean, like, obviously something I also enjoy a lot, and it changes it, and also just changes the math. Like, there's not going to be 2 cost controlled players that you hope to be pretty good in this team anymore.
That's right.
And then you just became more stars, studs and duds, and hope for the best there.
We're star dependent.
Yeah.
than they even were before. And this is a team that has a superstar quarterback already, which obviously is part of the reason that they did it. But they have a superstar quarterback already. They're dependent on not getting hurt,
Yeah.
and we've seen that play out in ways that when the Ravens have been eliminated, it's largely been due to a Lamar Jackson injury. Now, again, they point out Lamar Jackson is my favorite Raven of all time. He is the guy. He is the straw that stirs the drink. But the times that the Ravens have not advanced in 21, in 22, and in 25 again, Lamar Jackson has basically been the problem with injuries in each of those years. I'm not blaming it on Lamar. I'm just saying it's the consequence of the injuries was the Ravens are no longer the team they were with either a missing Lamar or a Lamar on the field who was playing at a fraction of himself as it was in 25.
Right. Yeah. When everything hinges on keeping him protected, and healthy, it just makes it all the more difficult to, like it reminds you how easy things can go downstream or downhill. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's look at, we've talked about some of the other departure from philosophy elements, but let's talk about the past trades of the number one selection in team history, because they've never traded, as I said, the number one pick for a player. So if you go back in 2003, okay, they traded their number one pick in 2004 plus their pick in the second round to move up the number 21. Move up back into the first round. I think it might have been 22, and take Kyle Bowler. Now, obviously, that trade did not work out. And that's the only other time they've traded a future number one selection was to move up and take Bowler. Not a great precedent, obviously. Billick, in a lot of ways, may have been really riled up about not getting the quarterback he wanted. Reportedly, he wanted Byron Leftwich in the top 10, and Leftwich, one of the other teams, traded away to get that pick from Minnesota, and then Minnesota failed to pick for a while, and they ended up with a good player, but the Ravens ended up, after they drafted Williams, in getting Suggs at that number 10 pick. Great pick for the Ravens, by the way. That first round, as a whole, didn't work out so bad, with Sizzle being the other half of that. But trading for Kyle Bowler is not something any Ravens fan is happy about.
Yeah, not with seeing what happened.
Yeah, he is literally the Tara Reid of first round draft picks, and that's he was dating her for a while. Okay, we go to 2010 when they traded back into round 2. They had the 25th overall pick. There were people who wanted them to move up to 24 to take Des Bryant. Don't know that was ever potentially in the cards. They traded the 25th pick, and I believe that was one used on Tim Tebow, if I recall correctly. But I may be having it slightly off. But it was that was the year. And that number 25 pick, they traded back in round 2, 18 spots, ended up with Sergio fall down the stairs Kindle.
Right. Oh, Sergio. Yeah. Hope he's doing all right.
Yeah. So, trading back hasn't always worked for the Ravens either. In 2012, they traded back to number 35. And 2011, I'm trying to remember whether they had the 29th or the 30th pick, because they lost in the conference championship on the Cundiff miss and the Evans drop, or the Evans getting stripped of the ball in the end zone. But so they either had number 29 or number 30, but then they ended up trading back to 35 and selecting Courtney Upshaw, who I think we'd have to say didn't work out as a first-round pick. He had 8 personal fouls and I think 7 sacks in his career with the Ravens, even though he did have a very big forced fumble in the Super Bowl.
Right. Yeah, I feel like his last, if I recall correctly, that was his last, or no, that was a rookie year. But I think in his last year here, if I recall correctly, he played a little bit better, but it was, not, obviously didn't live to the 35th pick.
So they didn't get value there. In 2018, they traded back from number 16 in one of the truly most upset points I've ever been in draft history, as people know. And they traded away out of the option to draft Derwin James at number 16. They traded back again at 22 when they could have had, I believe, DJ Moore would have been the guy,
right?
That they could have taken. And eventually they got Hayden Hurst at number 26. Now, the draft went fine otherwise, but this is a case of two wrongs don't make a right, or a bigger right doesn't overcome a really bad selection. And the Hurst selection, the trade down twice to get the Hurst and the additional draft capital, I think it's still very hard to defend as opposed to getting Derwin James.
Sure. I think also something that just came to mind when you talked about trading back for DJ Moore. He got traded,
Yep.
for a second round pick. I am wondering if we're going to see more and more trades out of this draft with people maybe being down on what the draft looks like. And yeah, that's like that's the kind of, it seems like maybe the cost of acquiring a player is higher this year because people don't value this year's draft picks as much.
I think that's possible, and I want to talk about that in the why. So we'll get down to that because I mean, Eric DeCosta is a very rational man, and the Ravens almost never make a mistake as an organization. They are absolute top of the heap in terms of player personnel decisions and using draft capital wisely. And whatever you think about the Ravens, and there's always going to be a lot of people who point to it and say, well, they haven't won anything. And, I've been a fan for 10 years and I've never seen them win the Super Bowl kind of thing. Sure. It's not reflective of how outstanding this organization has been in managing the assets that they have. Let's keep going on this in terms of the past trades here, because I want to get through this. So in 2018, also, they, of course, traded back into the number 32 selection. They didn't trade the number 1 pick in this case, but they traded back in and got Lamar Jackson for 2 number 2s, and the best trade in Ravens history without question. Sure. It is that. And then in 2022, it wasn't a big trade back, and they've had a couple other real small trade backs that I didn't include, or trade ups. They traded up 1 spot to get Haloti Ngata with that 1 spot going to Cleveland and being a 6th round pick. Unbelievable heist to get Haloti Ngata, obviously, there. And they traded back, and then they traded forward again when they picked up Joe Flacco. So they traded, I think they traded back from something like 6 to 25 and then back up to 18. It was that sort of thing.
I do remember. I didn't remember it being from 6, but I believe you on that. But I do remember they went back and then came forward. Yeah.
Yeah. They had a terrible year in 2007. So I think it was a high pick, but I thought 6, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, yeah, we'll take it. It's good.
Okay, and so in 22, they of course traded the Marquise Brown, got a draft pick in return, then a number 1 pick among an exchange of selections. So the true value of that trade was probably top of the 2nd round or near the top of the 2nd round, and then they traded back from 23 to 25, took Tyler Linderbaum, who, not a bad 4-year pickup, but not the kind of player you want to put a 1st round draft pick into because of the lack of market frictions, which we are now see playing out.
Right. It's like we knew. Yeah, but that was a crazy trade. I remember being very surprised with you on draft night with that. Incredible haul, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If I recall correctly, it was like just a 5th round pick. So I think it was still like the 26th or 27th pick in total value. Still 1st. I mean, Brown was good, but not great, in my opinion. And to be able to basically like redraw his pick was incredible. I couldn't believe it that they got it done, frankly. It does go into my prediction. My prediction for this offseason is that we were going to see, outside of like AJ Brown, and I guess, I wouldn't say DJ Moore quite is, gives me a check mark here, but I was expecting a couple wide receivers to go for high draft capital, because people are realizing, like, when Alec Pierce is getting, all the, all the dates to dance or whatever, just because he's the best wide receiver, you kind of realize you need to acquire wide receivers either in the draft or trade for them. Like, there's no other way. The good ones don't reach free agency. So yeah. Anyways, very surprised that we got that pick back then.
All right. Was one of those. In those years, I don't know if you were doing it that year in particular.
Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's changing the game, Mood.com. They created an entirely line of functional gummies, 100% federally legal THC blends, discreetly delivered right to your doorstep. And here's the best part. You can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with the promo code RAVENS. Now, I've tried a bunch of their gummies myself. Each one's totally unique. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out right away. They help me unwind fast, leave me refreshed the next morning. The Epic Euphoria gummies, they're perfect for when your day just isn't going the way you want it to go. What makes Mood special is how they pair the THC with natural herbs and adaptogens. You won't find blends like this at any local shop. They've got gummies designed for focus, relaxation, clarity, even energy, all made from cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. No pesticides, no shortcuts, just high-quality weed you can trust. Plus, Mood backs everything with a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So head on over to mood.com, check out their amazing selection, and don't forget to use the promo code RAVENS at checkout to save 20% off your first order.
But you used to be on the the draft tech chart or the JJ chart and really predicting what do you think is traded. It's a remarkable how the league still trades entirely on that basis. And you can occasionally see something in the top 12 or 13 picks, maybe where you get a little bit of a premium paid on that, but it's very rare. You had a weird trade last year where the Ravens moved back 5 spots in round 4 and up 5 spots in round 6. It didn't seem to make any sense, but they just apparently weren't prepared to make their selection.
George Sanders turned them down, and then they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, that's probably exactly the way it occurred, and that is just a middle fingering from the Sanders family. I'm not happy about. I got to tell you,
it's pretty absurd. And now for Monken to be there, just so wild. But anyways, that's not what the show's about.
All right, so let's talk about the downstream implications of the Crosby thing, because I think there's some good ones and some bad ones, and probably the best one is that this almost certainly means that Lamar Jackson will be extended. Why? Because the Ravens have to wait till next week to make this deal, and they have to create $30 million roughly. They don't have to create all of that, but they have to create a portion of the $30 million that they'll need for Crosby as soon as the trade is made. And the only realistic way to get that is by a Lamar Jackson extension. I also don't think you even want to go through with this if you can't extend Lamar Jackson and be sure that he's going to be here for all of these Crosby years.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we could hear about this as early as tomorrow, right? Like, it definitely feels on the horizon. I mean, we were all playing. Maybe you weren't playing. I don't know. I was somewhat playing the whole like, okay, he's having these tweets or his Instagram posts or whatever, and people were speculating that he was about to get extended, and that might be true. Right. That could be true. But I think it was now in retrospect, probably about at least also this deal for Crosby, which I guess he's excited about, which good, I guess. So that's cool. And I think, we talk all the time about the OBJ acquisition to get Lamar Jackson the first time. If it took Maxx Crosby to get him this time, I guess I'm excited because obviously keeping Lamar Jackson around is number one priority.
It is the number one priority, and if there were a palette of various choices, I'm not sure I believe that this would have been on Lamar Jackson's bingo card. Like, I think it would be an offensive player to start with. I think it would have been, get me a big offensive lineman, sign me Tyler Linderbaum if he really believed in that. Sign me somebody who can actually give me some protection, some time in the pocket, or sign me a wide receiver. But I don't believe he'd have said, get me Maxx Crosby, who can be on the field while I'm going and looking at my Surface tablet to help the.
Maybe 24 was worse than we remember, Ken, and he was like, I never want to be talking about that guy again.
Yeah, I guess if you're on the other side of the field from Maxx Crosby, yeah, maybe. All right, but I'm not buying it. I really don't buy that this was a Lamar motivated thing. I think Lamar may say, hey, look, I want to play on a Super Bowl champion. What can you do to help me get one? And they might have said, look, let us restructure. We'll promise you significant investment we made in the team this year. That could be. I'll give you downstream implication number 2 for me is that I think this means there's a very good chance Nnamdi Madubuike will be back playing. My reason is not the videos that are out there. It's that I don't believe the Ravens would take a swing like this without knowing it were true. Now, it's not a sure thing by any stretch, and I'm not convinced that Madubuike has had the discussions with the doctors that matter yet about whether or not he can continue this. I mean, oftentimes, that's why people go for second opinions. They don't like the answer from their doctor. You know, if you have a terminal diagnosis, I mean, the first thing you do, it's like an automatic appeal. You go for a second opinion from another doctor. Hey, is there anything else we can do? You're known for aggressive treatment. Don't tell me I have to give up at this point. You tell me there's some form of chemo or radiation or surgery that I can go through to try and beat this thing.
Right.
And I'm afraid, you know, that Madubuike may or may not, you know, hopefully it's not Dr. Nick Riviera who told him, yeah, you can play again.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope nothing would be worse, obviously, than he comes back and gets hurt in a even more significant way.
Yeah.
That would be just crushing. Yeah, I don't even want to think about it because it's just so bleak and sad and awful. So I hope it means that he'll be back and that, you know, honestly, you know, the way the conversation has gone about Madubuike has been bleak, right? The only reason we talk about him in this way is because we were given no reason not to. You know,
Right.
neck injury, weird conversations around him, etc. It did not feel like a normal season-ending injury, and all you can do is hope that it was bad, but not, I don't know, dangerous.
Yeah, and I think the things we've heard about it, which are limited, are that, you know, it has to do with narrowness of the spine, and that it wasn't necessarily an injury as much as the way he was born. And he's got a lot of muscle around there, obviously, but there's really significant injury risk, and that was the case with Zach Orr and ended his career. Zach Orr, very much in Zach Orr-like fashion, tried to come back from it because who wants to give up a football career?
Yeah.
And wasn't able to, you know, to make that work. So I don't know where they are in that process. But I do think it probably says good things about this. I'll say one thing, to the extent that Harbaugh was using the media to try to incent players to come back sooner, which is it's a legitimate point. That he probably did too much of that to try and put it on the player to try and come back earlier than he maybe otherwise would. That he wanted to focus on toughness. I hope that the acquisition of Dr. Nick Gill is going to take some of that pressure off the players. That he's going to be a you know, kind of a final say in some of these injuries, and the head coach should not be. And the head coach probably, I really hope Minter takes the Belichick approach to injuries. And I'll trust, you know, a doctor with the kind of track record that Gill has to make the right judgments for the organization and for the team and for the player, most importantly, to get them back at the appropriate time.
Yeah, for sure. That was pretty exciting signing. People asked me what I thought about it. And I was like, well, it sounds like the other team was not happy about it. So I guess good. Obviously, never heard of him before. Don't really know anything about him other than that. But hoping that he brings great wisdom to injuries and management and getting players healthy, quickly and being prepared to play when they are playing.
Right. Now we look at this Ravens defense. They still have significant holes at edge, corner, defensive tackle, and nose tackle, inside linebacker, whether or not Madubuike is back. I mean, they've got holes at defensive tackle that they're going to need to address in the draft. At inside linebacker because of the Buchanan injury, at cornerback because of the age of the room, at edge because they don't have their fourth guy yet. They at least need somebody. And I think it's got to be somebody who plays a significant number of snaps and probably somebody who at least has a pass rush contribution they can make that is significant. Meaning, I don't need an every down. I don't need a pure situational pass rusher. It wouldn't be the worst thing, but I don't need a pure situational pass rusher. But I need a guy who can contribute on the pass rush at least some, which is they don't. It's not easy to find those guys often. And I'd like some early down relief as well. So, you know, maybe the ideal player is another guy like Tavius Robinson who can do both. You know, not at the top level, certainly as a pass rusher, but also gives you some early down snaps. But I need somebody who can at least give me something as a pass rusher.
Right. Definitely a position that we need to look into. I strongly agree about defensive tackle. I thought that'd be a high priority, regardless of Madubuike as well. And you mentioned inside linebacker. That was a place that some people were like speculating the Ravens might make a splash in free agency. I'd be more surprised about that now, given the Crosby signing, but I suppose we'll see.
Right. They've got players they could get in free agency that would still be good. Voss and I talked a little bit about Leo Chenal, who's my number 5 free agent that I think I'd be excited about for the Ravens at this point. Great tackler, 2-down linebacker who gives you outstanding value on that, and then you bring in a dime back to replace him on 3rd down. You keep Roquan on the field. I really like that. But if you get Leo Chenal, you're really taking away from how Buchanan can contribute to the team in the near future, or at least for 26. And remember, in 27, they're not going to have Simpson because 26 is his last year as a Raven.
Right.
And in 27, they may not have Roquan either. So it's kind of important that they go out and get an inside linebacker, probably both in free agency and in the draft.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges the Ravens face each year, but I feel like this year is particularly true, is acquiring players in free agency to bolster something, but also giving opportunity to their young players to play what they need. I feel like they're really struggling with that in a few areas now, where like particularly inside linebacker is a huge one, with all the reasons you mentioned, with Buchanan not available at the beginning of the season. One might assume they want something probably better than Trent Simpson, but at what cost? Like, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
What structure? Like, it puts them in a really difficult position.
Yeah. So I think in all honesty, they may just have to go with Trenton Simpson and then return to Buchanan at some point during the season, and then from year 3 on for Buchanan. But it's going to leave them very short for 2027 with both Roquan and Simpson leaving, that they haven't planned ahead for that. So over the next 2 years, and that's what I meant about one draft and one free agent signing. I think the Ravens are going to have to invest at the inside linebacker position to fill those 2 departing players. We haven't even talked about Hummel, who's leaving. I guess it's possible somebody like Higgins or Chandler Martin could step up and take a backup / key special teams role on the team. But I'm not seeing either of those guys as being really obvious high value starters.
Right. I would slot them as what you said, a special teamer, a decent backup, and things of that nature. I'm not trying to expect too much more from what we've seen so far.
Right. Okay. So anyway, still a lot to do in the draft. That's one of the downstream implications of this Crosby signing, is they have one less thing to worry about, but they still have plenty of defensive picks that they're going to allocate. I think almost certainly Tyler Linderbaum will not be re-signed after the Crosby signing. Boy, would I be shocked if they flipped on that. But right now, the center market has been, a lot of pressure is on it right now in terms of players retiring. And today, Ryan Kelly retired, for example, for the Vikings.
Right.
Still, he didn't play much this last year, only about 329 snaps, but he played very well when he was in there. And somebody else has retired also in the last.
The Bears center.
Biades or what? No, Biades is the guy who got signed, right? But by
that sounds potentially true. Bears center.
All right.
Oh, that's right. They traded. Drew Dahlman is who.
Drew Dahlman retired.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big one. And he's one of the better ones in the league. So was Kelly. And now we're talking about Connor McGovern being one of the best available centers in the league. You're really buying high if you buy into McGovern. It's not like he's not a pretty good player, but you'd be buying high. Ravens might do it, but there's a lot of pressure on the top of the market with Linderbaum. There's going to be a lot of suitors for that, and by extension, every retirement is creating pressure that moves centers up in terms of the salary scale from top to bottom, and also will put pressure on the center position in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a lot of pressure on teams to move a guy to center, probably. So it is a good year. There are a lot of interior offensive linemen who could end up being centers. I haven't yet looked at the offensive tackles to know which offensive tackles might be forced inside, because oftentimes there's a guy like a Stevenson or somebody who's going to move inside from tackle to center. And you don't know about it right at this point, but his listed position is tackle, so of course he's going to play tackle. Except right. No way is he going to play tackle with his 32-inch arms, so he's moving inside.
Right. Yeah, I also saw Bullock's a free agent, which I didn't realize. So
What? Corey Bullock?
I that's what I saw. I don't know if it's true or not. Let me double check that.
He's
But like,
an ERFA maybe. I don't. He's not a UFA. I mean, he's only got one season with the Ravens.
let's see.
All right, I'll look at him on the Ravens roster right now. We need to solve that mystery. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I was surprised too when I saw it. I never trust that free agency tool, but when I was using it, he said it was
Corey Bullock, year one, Maryland. He'll be in year 2 this next year.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, the center market just wild. I've been pretty clear that I don't want to resign Linderbaum for the price that he seems to be commanding, and I just feel like you're better off spending half that on a center that's still pretty good, and then having another chunk of change to go get another guy. But we'll see. I mean, obviously, I don't think the team wants to. I expect them to sign somebody and not go into the draft without it being an empty hole. But yeah, we'll have to see how they approach that.
So I think we probably Ravens fans have been getting used to the point that Linderbaum's leaving after the last 2 years when it became reported out there that he was looking for $25 million a year. This is not a guy I would pay to reset the center market. It's just that simple. And he's just not a particularly good pass blocker. And as great a run blocker as he is, as well as he moves downfield, all that stuff is not as valuable as having a good pass blocker at center. Much rather have one of these guys who's equivalent at both or a little bit better as a pass blocker than run blocker, which would be my preference. And I think they can get that at a fraction of the cost of Linderbaum, and hopefully they'll take the shot at it, and hopefully whatever shot they take won't end up being Gino Kradgowski again.
Correct. What else do you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's cap flexibility is kind of a big thing from this. It's a positive downstream implication, but there is some risk associated with this. So Crosby is on a deal where he's making most of his money early on. That is its pluses and its minuses. If he had a backloaded contract, he'd be less likely to treat this as, say, a 2-year deal. So let's look into the future and see the bad things and the good things that can happen at either end of the set of outcomes that might happen for Maxx Crosby as a Raven. On the extreme left-hand side of the curve, he gets hurt early in his Ravens career. He never produces very much of anything. And the Ravens are terribly disappointed by the deal. And Ravens fans are upset as hell. People like me never stop talking about it because you should never trade away to you. So anyway, that's the extreme left end. Okay. Extreme right end, Crosby has 13 sacks the first year, and he has 12 sacks the second year. And they're saying, yes, all right, we finally got that pass rusher that we haven't had really since Doomerville, maybe, or since Suggs's defensive player of the year era. I mean, we've got that pass rusher now we really love, and we've got it for 2 more years. And then Crosby comes back before the 2028 season and says, I've outgrown this contract. I want a new deal. I'm holding out. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's very possible on the right-hand edge of that curve. If they get what they hope to get out of Maxx Crosby, is that he doesn't think he signed for 4 years. He thinks he signed for 2 years.
Right.
And then we're gonna talk about a new contract extension, or I'm not playing. And it's the risk of a player at his age who feels like he needs to get a bite out of the apple again at 31 or 32 for his last chance. It's just very high. And probably my biggest single concern is that the Ravens won't realize the full upside. No, that's not my biggest single concern. My biggest single concern is he gets hurt. But my one of my concerns is they won't realize the full upside on the right-hand side of the curve. And it makes the landing strip of real value for the Ravens pretty limited on the middle of that outcome. They certainly don't want a full left side outcome. Nobody does. Right. And a full right side outcome is just going to cost him a lot more money and mute his value significantly in terms of what they get out of this trade.
Right. Correct. I guess we have to just talk about the privilege of being in that situation and hope for that. It is, the consequence of drafting well, right, Ken? You have to make tough decisions about who to extend.
This isn't a consequence of drafting well. This is if you draft well, you have that player for 4 years. There's nothing else you can do. He can whine and talk about it, but he can't change.
I'm totally being tongue in cheek, but I guess they did pick this player, with some picks, and I guess they're I guess they're hoping for that, outcome, right? Is what I'm getting at.
I want people to realize the full risk in play here. If 2 years from now, Maxx Crosby says, I want a new contract or I want to be traded, those are the two options. And I'm sure they're picking up whatever trade clauses exist in Crosby's contract right now. He may even have a no trade clause or ability to decline certain teams. But since he just got traded, that doesn't seem likely, right? it doesn't seem likely that we'd still have a no trade clause in contract. So we'll assume there's no trade clause in his contract. He'll reduce his own trade value by demanding a new contract because he's not under contract for 2 years or for 28 and 29 million or whatever the last 2 years of the deal are. It's approximately that. He's under contract for whatever, he demands. And that's where, you're just the structure of the contract does not lend itself well to realizing the full value of Maxx Crosby. If they had a more steepness, the acquisition price probably would have been lower, but they would have the higher likelihood that they would realize the full value of the upside of Maxx Crosby.
No, I hear what you're saying. And I guess only time will tell how that gets played out.
All right, you got the increased injury risk for a player in his 29 to 32 seasons. This is unquestionably an enormous bet on Crosby's health. So far, he's been one of the most durable players in the NFL. So I hope that risk does not end up, biting him in the ass here after they've unloaded a ton of draft capital to get him. But it can't be ignored. It is a big risk, and we have to at least mention it here.
Right. Nothing more to add there.
All right. So let's talk about the why. Why did they end up pulling the trigger on this trade? What made the Ravens think this was a good idea when it's very contrary to Ravens history to make this kind of a trade? But I think, if I had a hypothesis about this, I'd basically start here, Alec, and I'd like to hear yours too. But I think DaCosta looked at this year's board. There are a lot of players almost seem like they're square peg round hole players, less positional value, don't affect the passing game kind of players that are in the draft at the top who are great players. Caleb Downs now has an injury flag, he'd be one of the players that I'd be excited about falling to the Ravens at 14, before the injury flag came up. Sonny Styles would be a player that I think could have been a surprise Ravens pick if he had somehow fallen number 14. I don't think there's no way in hell it's happening after that combine.
No, it's not happening. No.
Yeah. But it would have been.
I was mentioning that they had to maybe trade up to get him.
Yeah.
To that 4 spot. I mean, It wouldn't shock me if he's gone in the first 5 picks at this point.
Right.
So I'll be honest with you, Ken. It was pretty clear to me pretty quickly in my very limited draft research at this point. Obviously it wasn't going to be the Hamilton at 14 year. There just wasn't that kind of players to possibly push it that far back.
Downs would have been the guy.
Sure. And I just think that they knew that they weren't going to get a player like that. I think the best player they could have gotten there was probably a guy like Vega, right? Mm-hmm. And he could be great. Don't get me wrong. I just think that they got a little less excited about that. I think they looked at the 14th overall pick this year and said to themselves, we feel like in most drafts, it is almost like we were in the divisional and got knocked out by the quality of player we were going to see at 14.
Right. So you're saying if the quality of player 14 is more typical of a quality of player you'd see at 24, it's probably not quite that bad, but I agree with you in philosophically that they thought the 14th pick was not worth what the 14th pick is usually worth.
Correct. And I also think that they were thinking to themselves, we have, we're essentially just giving ourselves, instead of saying, oh, when we pick at 14 or, 25, we hope that these 5 players are there. They're like, at 14, we expect 15 players to be there, right. All that we felt kind of in a clump that we're comfortable with. And like other teams will see that there won't be the value in trading back, yada, yada, yada.
Meaning there won't be the option to trade back. That he believes that trading back down will be difficult, so you can't realize the value of the 14th pick.
Correct.
Even if you defer it potentially, that would have been an interesting move for the Ravens to defer some value in a next year, allow somebody else to trade up to 14, and see if you want to play it that way. I don't think that'd have been popular with the fans at all. The fans always want basically what happened here is to trade multiple number ones for a player right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that they definitely thought the 14's value this year was depressed. I will say on the flip side of that coin, every year people say, oh, but next year that's going to be the draft. But allegedly, the 26 drafts is pretty loaded. So that is something that does make me a little disappointed is that, in the world that there is a negative outcome in this season, they had a better than expected pick, even if it's in the middle, right, of next year's draft. It could have been potentially a very solid player that fell to them. So, yeah, I think that's the 27 pick is the part that really just grinds my gears. I've been closer to saying giving up day 1 and 2 than giving up day 1 of next year personally.
Yeah, you would rather give up 1 and 2 this year to right. I would have rather.
I'm saying day 1 and 2. I'm saying the 1, 2, 3 of this year.
Oh, geez.
Versus I'm saying almost.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sold on it.
Yeah,
but
I think I'm with you. I think I would have made that trade. I think I would have.
At least you know what you're giving up. You know, and
that's a lot of value. I have to look at that. Let's look at that real quickly because it's an interesting thought experiment. Let me make sure I know what the 3 picks this year because you're really trading. You're trading value that you know what it is, and this is going to take a second here.
And the class.
Okay, we got the number 14 pick is worth 1,100. He's already updated this for the trade, and then you got about 650 in rounds 2 and 3, so be about 1,750.
It's equivalent.
I might flip on that. I might flip and say I'd rather trade 2 number 1s because the picks they have in rounds 2 and 3 this year are pretty early.
They are.
They're both in the top half of the round.
Yeah.
It is close, but I think that it is very close.
There's potential that, and this is a pretty absurd statement to make, but I think I honestly do believe it's true. I think there's potential that the tiers that they have of players that they would pick to 14 might be there at 2 in the second round this year. I think it's possible. Not high, but I would say like 15% passable.
So somebody slips to number 45 who they have in a broad group of say 20 players that they might draft at number 14.
Right. Probably wasn't their first choice at 14.
Yeah.
But pretty high.
Just to be clear, they don't need more than 15 players. Sorry, no more than 14 players than they could draft at number 14. So presumably they got a tier list that includes that or less, for that first pick. Right. And then they may have, hey, we know these guys are going to be out. We got 9 guys that could be here, and then we'll talk about whether or not we'd like to trade down or not. They could have some tiering system like that. That'd be interesting to know how they think of it strategically like that, as opposed to just this guy's an 8.5 and this guy's an 8.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how the draft plays out. But I will say, like, for what it's worth, I wasn't like super thrilled about who they were going to get at 14. Like, I wasn't like licking my chops about any of these guys, so much so that I'm like, that's a big loss. So that part makes me feel a little bit better as we talk through it.
All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the why. Is I think that they may have already been rebuffed on the possibility of a trade up. We say, well, they should have just traded up to number 5. Well, they may have tried. They may really have tried to do that, and figured out how they could have gotten a pass rusher by moving up. For one thing, there's risk involved because it does look like there'll be at least one of the top 3 pass rushers will be there at number 5, but they may only like 2 of them. And it may be those guys, Bain goes at number 2 and number 4, is the other one they like. Yeah. Whether it's, Reese or Bailey, and they end up with not the guy they want at number 5. And they even end up having to draft another position because of it.
I would hope that it'd be a draft day trade, right? It wouldn't be a premeditated trade.
And that I think makes more sense. If the Ravens are doing that, they can wait to do it. They have.
We do know feelers are put out at the combine, right? Like, we've seen that before. Like, what was it? They were trying to get Drake May, right? The Giants wanted to get Drake May or whatever, and they couldn't do it. So, like, yeah, I think That's a known thing too.
Okay. Now, one thing comes up out of this that I don't really believe has happened, but we need to inspect it anyway, is that the Ravens have just gotten out of these Jupiter meetings, or maybe they're even still going on, but they're the meetings in Jupiter, Florida, that happen with Bisciotti and the other top people in the organization. They discuss the direction of the team. The last time they had these, they traded back into the first round and got Lamar Jackson. So, they decided basically that the Flacco, that's not the last time they had the talks, but the last time they made a major splash out of these talks was the Lamar Jackson trade. These meetings have just occurred. I really hope we are not seeing an inflection point in organizational history where Bisciotti is taking a stronger hand in pushing the direction of the draft, personnel changes, and things like that. I don't believe we are, but in his entire history, Bisciotti only made 3 major changes, 3 major things, as far as we know, on the football operations side. He hired Harbaugh over Billick. He hired Harbaugh over Billick. He hired Minter over Harbaugh, and he changed from Ozzie to DaCosta. He hasn't made any other football operations changes in 25 years. Okay, right. The 2001 pick, actually, the 2001 changed to, 99 changed to Billick was during the Modell era. So it wasn't, it didn't have anything to do with Bisciotti at that point. So I can't bring myself to believe he had a hand in this, and yet I can't not inspect it. And I do look back at the Lamar thing as being a very significant inflection point in Ravens history. They decided to move on from Joe Flacco at that point. He still started 9 more games for them while Lamar was a rookie, but they basically made the commitment to Lamar by trading back into the first round to get him.
Right. Well, and DaCosta was a big part of that too. Going to get Lamar, Bisciotti rather was a big part of going to get Lamar. He's been pretty vocal about that. So, nice choice.
Bisciotti is the one I'm worried about.
I know.
I think Bisciotti was fairly well integrated into the decision to the Flacco trade, the acquisition of Flacco, where the Ravens, undoubtedly needed a quarterback at that time. Nobody was questioning the notion that, hey, this isn't the time to change quarterbacks because we've got noodle-armed injured Steve McNair and Kyle Bowler we're moving on from. But when they went after him, they were at 6, I believe. Again, we need to check that. Moved back to something like 25 and then back up to 18 and ended up getting Flacco in that process. And I think Bisciotti has talked about that as often something that it almost seems like he was involved in directly as opposed to just sitting in the room while it was done.
Correct. Yeah. Now I'm going to look up the 2008 draft.
So where's your level of concern on a scale of 1 to 10? And I'll write down mine for this being a possibility of either an individual meddling situation from Bisciotti himself.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, I'm a non-zero number. I'm a 3. I think it's.
You think it's a 3% chance? Wow.
No. I think it's a 3 on the scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, okay, 30% chance.
Yeah. So no, not a 30% chance. A 3 in terms of magnitude. It's probably an earthquake scale where it's a geometric scale, but it's a 3. It's not a 0. It's not a 1. It's not in terms of the possibility that Bisciotti has stepped in and ordered this thing to happen.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say I was in the same band there. I was, when I originally was thinking it was a 100-point scale, I was saying 30. So, yeah. And it was the 8th pick. It was the 8th pick.
8 down to 25 up to 18.
8 to, let's see, click. 8 to 26.
26 and 18. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was also a draft where they acquired Willis McGahee. No, they acquired him the year before. Never mind.
Yeah, so 8 to 26, and then 26 to 18, I recall, right?
Yeah,
18. Yep.
I remember where we were because we were overseas when that trade happened. We were actually in Japan, and the draft was odd hours, and I said, oh, wait a minute, they moved around, they got Joe Flacco, and that was I that was exciting at the time anyway to know that. And then Ray Rice with the second pick that year.
Correct. Yeah, I remember that too. I was in a restaurant. I forget which one. And I saw it on the TV go across. So, yeah, very cool.
So here we get to the end of the Maxx Crosby situation. Undeniably exciting player, very positive in terms of what he can do for this defense. The credit card bill racked up is not insignificant in terms of cap and draft capital. And the Ravens will end up paying this off over a period of 4 years here or more in terms of how they restructure contracts, add up void years and whatnot. We saw Odell Beckham's 1-year contract became a 3-year gift that kept on giving. I hope Maxx Crosby certainly isn't anywhere near that same class, but gives the Ravens some cap flexibility and some additional opportunity to take risk. But I'm gonna miss those draft picks.
Sure, who wouldn't? Well, a couple people wouldn't, but I will. I as well. So, pleasure talking to you, Alec, Ken. I feel better. Similar when you watch the film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say after a loss, sometimes you feel better. I feel a little bit better right now after talking to you. So thank you for being there as my therapist today. What's your rate?
My unpaid therapist. We got some unpaid marriage counseling from our driver on our recent trip, by the way. But that's it's not dissimilar. Marie and I have a wonderful relationship. We disagreed on whether to do something or not, and our driver then encouraged us to wait, and I thanked him for being our unpaid therapist. But awesome. I'm glad that I'm the more positive guy on this move than you. I know a lot of people are very negative on this. In terms of my excitement level on this, if I'm going from 0 to 100, where 50 is I'm ambivalent to the move, my feeling is probably about a 37. Okay. I'm not I'm not a 94 on this, and I'm not a 65, but I'm also not a 0. Yeah. And I think they could win from this, and they just got an enormous bet out there on Crosby's health and productivity over these next 4 years.
Correct. You didn't ask, but I would say I'm about 23.
23. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's fair enough.
Yeah, so I definitely can see the upside. I guess there's so many. The biggest shocks to me, in summary, are giving up the draft capital, which we are not one to do, and also just the fact that I was preparing myself for a world that Minter was going to solve the defense. Right. He was going to raise the boats. We don't need to make any crazy additions. What we already have was good enough, and Minter's going to make it look great. And I guess whatever evaluation they did, they thought they needed this. And
they may still have that opportunity because Minter is a defensive backs guy, and Mickens, very importantly, the defensive backs coach, is a historically good or a very highly thought of coach of defensive backs who made the Notre Dame defensive backfield the best in the country. Mm-hmm. That may be a bet on their ability to go cheap at corner and find guys, whether it's Longer Beam and Kone from last year's draft, or whether it's turning TJ Tampa into a better player than his physical attributes would say he could be at the top end, or getting somebody new this year who's not in a top round that Mickens can turn into somebody better. I think there's still some of that there that they really have to hit on some elements of positional coaching in order to win on this defense.
For sure.
All right. Always great talking football with you, Alec. Tell folks where they can reach out to you online.
Sure. You can find me on my blog, Polianis.com. I'm going to write about this tomorrow. I'm guessing that's when the episode will be up. I'll link to it and summarize some of my thoughts there. And feel free to reach out to me there. And some of my socials are there as well.
All right. Other folks out there, hit me up on Twitter anytime you have an idea for a podcast, a film study short. I'd love to talk to you for something for 20 or 30 minutes, generally speaking, that you're very passionate about. And let's talk about what you think about roster construction this time of year in particular, or if you have something historic you want to talk about, or maybe some trend you've seen in Ravens history. All those are on the table, and so is anything else you want to talk about. I'd love to hear from some new people. We have a very large stable of guests that come on this show. Alec is certainly one that probably does 10 episodes a year with me, but we have a large stable of other people, and I need to grow it, since last year we did 386 podcasts. And I do a fair number of them solo, but I do need a large stable of guests in order to draw from. So hopefully we develop a relationship. And I love talking football with new people. at the very least. Alec, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Ken.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.